When I was young and broke, retirement seemed like something distant and vague. But here's what I realized later. Old age isn't a time for survival. It's a time for freedom. And a secure life after 60 isn't a coincidence. It's the result of a mindset, decisions, and actions put in place long before that time. In this video, I'm going to show you an unconventional approach to retirement wealth, one that doesn't require financial genius, but does require thought. And by the end, we'll break down a concrete action plan that you can start using today. If this philosophy resonates with you, hit subscribe so you don't miss a single idea that could transform your final decades. They say retirement is the end, but let's look at it differently. What if retirement is actually the most important beginning of your entire life? Sounds like a paradox, right? We spend decades working, building, saving, and when the time finally comes to reap the rewards, many find themselves without the energy, the dreams, or, most importantly, the resources to live with dignity. The statistics are brutal. Over 40% of Americans have no retirement savings at all. Meanwhile, others, people like you, who are searching for answers, want more. Not just to survive, but to thrive. And I get that. Because I've been at rock bottom, with a wife, a child, and debts. That's when I ask myself, if I keep going this way, where will I be in 10 or 20 years? And I didn't like the answer. That was the moment I realized retirement isn't the result of a government program or an employer's goodwill. It's the result of a philosophy you build into yourself long before you stop working. You can't create a comfortable old age without a system, and you can't live free from financial stress if your mindset is constantly generating anxiety. Retirement wealth doesn't start with money. It starts with awareness, with a decision, with a new idea about who you want to be in the final third of your life. Why do I call it a philosophy? Because money is the result. The cause lies in your beliefs, your values, your daily habits, which, over the years, either lead you to full financial independence or trap you in a cycle of need. I wasn't a financial genius, but one day I heard the words of my mentor, Earl Schoaf. If you want life to get better, you have to get better. And I started to change myself. And as I changed, my finances began to change too. Over the years, I've seen thousands of people build not just wealth from scratch, but freedom, because they made decisions based on a philosophy that works. And today I want to share that philosophy with you. It has nothing to do with clever schemes, markets, risks, or math. It's about something else: understanding, discipline, and, most importantly, foresight. Because here's what I'll tell you: the future comes to everyone. But the quality of that future is always a choice. I realized one important thing: a secure old age isn't so much a financial achievement as it is the result of a well-structured life. It's not about a retirement account, it's about retirement thinking. When I was in my 30s, I heard something that stopped me in my tracks. If you're not planning your own wealth, you're automatically planning poverty. And that hit me hard because at the time, I wasn't planning anything. I was just working, completing tasks, surviving, but not planning. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing the future will take care of itself. That retirement is just something that will happen. But here's the truth I learned from experience. Nothing just happens unless you build it. And the longer you postpone this realization, the less time you'll have left. People often ask me, Jim, where do I start if I'm already 50 and haven't saved a thing? And I say, you start from the same place everyone starts, with a decision. The decision that, from now on, I live differently. Not tomorrow. Not when you've got extra money. Today. Because philosophy isn't a strategy for the rich. It's a compass for anyone who wants to end up in the right place. I remember a man who came up to me after a seminar. He was 58 and said, I've only got $20,000 in the bank. Is it even worth starting? And I said, is it worth doing nothing and watching that number shrink even more? Retirement philosophy isn't about how much you have. It's about how you think about what you have. If you can learn to manage a little, the big won't be far behind. You know what I call retirement wealth? It's when you no longer wake up with anxiety. When your bills are paid, your fridge is full, and you wake up thinking, today I live. And you don't need millions for that. What you need is order. Order in your thoughts, your habits, your money. My mentor, Mr. Schoaf, used to say, it's not about how much you earn, it's about how much you keep and what you do with it. Now that's the first rule of retirement philosophy. Control your wallet before life starts controlling you. The second principle: don't just think about income, think about flow. People often say, I'll retire and live off my pension. But a pension isn't a source, it's a result. The true source is your skills, your experience, your wisdom. What if those could still generate income after 60? I knew people who started teaching online at 70, blogging, writing books, and it's not about the internet, it's about the philosophy. I can still offer value. I didn't get serious about building my finances until well into my 30s. But thanks to a philosophy of action, not waiting, I built capital that worked for me. When I became a millionaire, I was just past 40. And it wasn't because I was special. It was because I followed simple, proven principles. Here's another thing. Don't build your retirement around numbers alone. Build it around goals. Goals are like lighthouses in the dark. They give direction. Decide what you want in your later years. To travel, to be with family, to have the freedom to help others. Each of these goals requires a different financial structure. And if you don't define them now, someone else will define them for you. Usually that someone is circumstance. Remember when I said, don't ask life to be easier, ask yourself to be stronger? That's what retirement philosophy is about. Not wishing for an easy life, but choosing strong thinking. Because when you think like a wealth builder, even retirement becomes your ally, not your threat. Let me tell you a truth that may not be all that comfortable. Most people aren't poor in old age because they didn't earn money. They're poor because they didn't think, or at least they didn't think ahead. And that's where the philosophy of wealth becomes crucial. I've often said, poverty isn't a state of your wallet, it's a state of your mind. And once you truly understand that, you gain the power to change everything, no matter your age, income, or experience. When I was 25, I was broke. I had a wife, a child, a mountain of debt, and worst of all, the belief that everything depended on the economy, the government, my boss, luck, everything except me. One day, a friend invited me to a seminar by a man named Earl Schoaf. That night split my life into before and after. Schoaf said something simple that pierced my soul. For things to change, you have to change. And I thought, what if he's right? That's when I stopped studying economics and started studying philosophy. Not markets, but myself. Not chasing a higher salary, but a higher level of discipline. I realized that money doesn't solve your problems. It just amplifies who you already are. If you're irresponsible, more money will make you even more irresponsible. But if you know how to grow, even a little will become a lot. I started tracking my expenses, keeping a journal of income, figuring out which earnings were productive and which were just emotional reactions. And the most interesting part, when I changed my attitude toward money, money started showing up. Not magic, not luck, just focus. And that's the focus I recommend to anyone who wants to create a secure retirement life. Don't start with the question, how much money do I need? Start with, what do I want my old age to look like? Then ask, what can I do today to get there? At one point, I created a simple exercise for myself. I sat down and described my ideal retirement day, where I woke up, what I did, who I spent time with, how much that lifestyle cost, and you know what? Most of it was achievable without millions. It just needed a system. So, the second principle of the retirement wealth philosophy, build a model for your retirement day, not just a retirement account. You can't plan your life based on what the government allows. You have to build a life you allow yourself to live. And here's something else. Aging doesn't lower your value. It raises it. If you've lived a life full of experience, wisdom, knowledge, why not use that as an asset? When I was already successful and over 50, I started hosting seminars not for profit, but for impact. And that impact came back in the form of new ideas, opportunities, even income. That's another lesson. If you have value, it never depreciates, not even in retirement. I knew people who started consulting younger colleagues at 65, running paid sessions, hosting workshops, starting online businesses. They didn't see retirement as the finish line. They saw it as a platform. Like I always said, true wealth isn't money. It's the ability to create value regardless of age. I remember a woman from Arizona who asked at one of my seminars, what if I've lost 30 years to financial chaos? What now? I told her, real retirement doesn't begin with time. It begins with focus. And you can change that focus today. A year later, she wrote to me. She had opened a small painting studio and started teaching kids and seniors. It didn't make her a millionaire, but she began living with both income and fulfillment. And that is the philosophy. Another trap? Consumption. Many think, I'll retire and finally spend everything I've saved. But here's a thought. If you spend it all, you won't be free tomorrow. A better goal is to build a system where your money works for you, not the other way around, even after 60. It's possible. That's the philosophy of flow. I've always said, it doesn't matter how old you are. What matters is how much energy, clarity, and focus you have. If you've got those, retirement wealth won't be the exception. It will be the natural result of a life well lived. You know why most people fear old age? It's not the wrinkles. It's not the medications. It's the feeling that they've lost control. Everything changes. Health, pace of life, the kids are grown, and suddenly you realize if you didn't build a foundation, you begin to sway. But here's the power. The foundation isn't built on the outside, it's built on the inside. That's why I talk so much about philosophy. My favorite metaphor is a garden. I often said, life is like a garden. If you don't plant good seeds, the weeds will grow on their own. And as you approach retirement, it becomes clear, what you're harvesting now isn't random. It's the result of dozens of seasons you either used or ignored. But here's the encouraging part. Even in the final chapters, you can still plant. When I was over 50, I stopped thinking about money and started thinking about legacy. I asked myself, what will remain after I'm gone? And I didn't mean just financial inheritance. I meant philosophy, ideas, a way of life that others could follow. That's when I understood real retirement wealth is when you become a source of wisdom, not just a consumer of resources. And when I started sharing this mindset, I saw how it changed lives. A 72-year-old man once told me after a talk, I thought my life had closed down, and you just opened a new room in my house. That's what philosophy does. It opens doors even where most people have put a period. Now let me give you another principle, maybe the most important one. Don't live in retirement like it's downsizing. Live like it's the unfolding of your full potential. I know society often sends the message, you're not what you used to be. But I'll tell you this, if you've got clarity, discipline, and experience, you're more powerful than you were at 30. Why? Because now you see deeper. You're not chasing. You already know what's worth your time and what's not. And that's real capital. I've had the privilege of speaking to millions of people. And one of the most common things I hear is, I could have done this earlier if I had known. And that's why I speak now, so that you know, so that you don't have that if only, so that you retire not with regret, but with clarity, with peace, and yes, with abundance. I want you to ask yourself this question right now. What can I give others when I'm no longer working? Because here's the irony. It's when you've retired that you're needed the most. As a mentor, as an example, as a source of experience. And if you live philosophically, not just accumulating, but sharing, your wealth won't fade. It will become legacy. And one more thing. I've always said, you either shape your life or you let life shape you. In old age, this principle becomes even more important. If you don't create a structure, randomness will pull you in. If you don't create value, emptiness will swallow you. But if you live consciously each day, you'll be rich. Even when your bank account is quiet, your life will speak loudly. Here's what I want you to remember. Retirement wealth isn't a question of accounts. It's a question of role. What role do you want to play in life's final chapter? Do you want to be the wise gardener, passing on seeds, or a silent bystander fading away? I know who I want to be, and I know who you can be. You can become a legend in your family, in your community, in your life. Now I want you to pause for a moment, take a breath, and picture yourself 10, 15, 20 years from now. Where are you? What do you look like? What are you feeling? Does your life look the way you want it to? Because here's the truth, what you just imagined is either already being built or already fading away. Which one it is depends on your answers to a few simple but powerful questions. Grab a pen. Yes, right now. And write your answers down. They're not for me, they're for you. First, how confident am I in my financial future? On a scale from 1 to 10. 1 means I have no plan, I'm just hoping. 10 means I'm actively working every day on stability and growth. Be honest. That number is a mirror. One you're better off looking into today than 10 years from now. Second, how systematic is my approach to retirement? 1 means I'm just working and hoping for the best. 10 means I know how much I need, where the money will come from, and what kind of lifestyle it will support. Third, how well am I preparing for my retirement role, not just my retirement account? 1 means I'm thinking only about finances. 10 means I'm thinking about the value I'll still bring once I'm no longer working for someone else. Fourth, how much do I live by a philosophy of action, not waiting? 1 means I delay decisions and wait for inspiration. 10 means I take responsibility daily, regardless of circumstances. And fifth, how disciplined am I in the small things that lead to big outcomes? 1 means I often quit when it's tough. 10 means I build willpower, even in the little stuff. Look at your scores. Don't judge yourself, just look honestly. Now ask, which area is my weakest? Because that's the one pulling your entire level down. And that's where you need to begin. Pick one area, just one, and create a 1-week action plan for it. For example, if you scored 3 on discipline, your plan might be, every morning I'll wake up 30 minutes earlier and write in my financial journal. Like, if your issue is systemization, set a goal like, by the end of the week, I'll list all my expenses from the past month and build a simple Excel sheet. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be done. And one more request, drop a comment. What was your lowest score? And what's your plan for the week? Because what's spoken out loud, lives. And maybe your example will spark someone else's change. And if you want more of these deep conversations, subscribe to the channel. We're not chasing hype here, we're digging deeper. We're not here to entertain, we're here to build. Like the video, if this message speaks to you, and let us know in the comments, what does retirement wealth mean to you? Remember this, it's not life that changes, it's you who changes, and life simply responds. So, we've come a long way, from philosophy to practice, from fear to clear action. And here's what I want you to take away from this video. Your retirement doesn't begin at 60. It begins in your mind, and it begins today. Once I heard a simple phrase that changed me forever. You're not getting older, you're accumulating. And here's the question. What exactly are you accumulating? Fear, deferred dreams, or confidence, wisdom, abundance, and impact? Life doesn't give us guarantees, but it does give us choices. And every single day we either reinforce our freedom or deepen our dependence. And even if it feels like it's too late, it's not. Too late only happens when you stop believing you can change. But if you still have belief, then you still have a future. I've lived long enough to say this with certainty. True wealth isn't a number in your bank account. It's the ability to look in the mirror and know you lived your life with wisdom, not just by instruction. It's waking up at 70 not wondering, how far will the money stretch, but smiling and saying, I built this. And if today you've come even one step closer to that realization, I believe your tomorrow is already brighter. As I've always said, don't wish for it to be easier. Wish for yourself to be better. Because when you get better, everything else rises with you. Your relationships, your money, your health, and yes, your old age. So here's your challenge. Live in such a way that your retirement isn't the end, it's your legacy. Live so that someone someday says, I built my life by following the example of that person. And if that means starting today with a small step, take it. Because your final years deserve to be better than your first.